After an impressive start to the season, South Carolina might be showing us who they truly are. Drubbed by Ole Miss last week by 24 points. Alabama, of course, that historic letdown in Nashville that people are still buzzing about. We'll break down this one with Steve Merrill, of course, from WagerTalk.com. Steve, Bama's a 21-point favorite on the road in the SEC, which doesn't happen a whole lot, but it does for them, of course. But your thoughts going back to last weekend with Bama. There were a lot of upsets in college football that didn't surprise me. I'm rarely surprised because I've been around the block a few times, but I got to admit, Bama, Vandy, that one shocked me.
But if you recall, we talked about this all the time with big favorites, and I do play a lot of big favorites. In fact, one of the reasons I'm ranked number one this year in college football at WagerTalk.com, had a 3-0 sweep again last week on Saturday, is because I play mostly favorites now in college football. It's so different than when I started 29 seasons ago in the mid-90s. I was always underdog, right? Contrarian handicapper. But what you look for when you're playing a big favorite is not only the motivation of focus spot, which was not for Alabama last week, for some of the reasons you just mentioned. They probably took them for granted. Also, it was a road trip for DeBoer. If you went back and look at DeBoer's first two seasons at Washington, he had some real eggs. He had a couple double-digit favorite losses as well with the Huskies. But then also you look for the big dog not to have any backdoor cover potential. And I talked about this a lot on shows last week, is that Vanderbilt has a good offense this season. They're averaging the high 30s, over 40 at home. So I stayed well off that game last week. I'm not getting in front of Bama, but it didn't look like a focus spot. And Vanderbilt had the capability offensively. And I didn't think they're going to win outright, but it did not shock me that they were competitive in that game. But the question becomes now, what do we do with this week's game? First of all, DraftKings puts out bettable lines the Wednesday before last week. So, they have a lot of the games up for next week up right now, and then they pull them down, before Saturday. The look-ahead line last week, a bettable line was 21.5 for this game. So, the market hasn't really changed much based on that result last week, which I thought was kind of interesting. Well, it's come down to 21, but the money is coming on the underdog South Carolina. A lot of books opened 22 on Sunday night after the Alabama loss. So let's look at my simulation. 10,000 games simulated through my database. I've got Alabama winning by 23. So there's a little bit of line value, especially at 21 or less, which is a key number. I think the key to this handicap, though, is let's put ourselves in the minds of the Bama players. Is it a focus spot? Back in the day, a loss like this would have very well maybe eliminated them from national title contention, being as such a big favorite, but it hasn't. They're still a top 10 team. They win over Georgia, let's not forget. They still have only one loss on the season, and they also have a championship game around the corner. So they are well alive, especially with 12 teams making the playoffs now versus just 2 or 4 like the old models. So I do think Bama shows up this week, especially back at home. And South Carolina, a nice little play on team. That Kentucky win is looking nice after week 2, as Kentucky's been pretty formidable since, including almost beating Georgia. And then they came close against LSU, losing by just 3. Did beat up on Akron. But like you said, Mark, you got to wonder if that fatigue is setting in. That 27-3 loss last week was not a good sign either in my book. Offensively, struggled to move the ball, especially through the air. Bama or pass for me in this one. There's not a lot of line value, but at 21 or less, I think I'd rather be on the Alabama side.
Steve, of course, joins us for all the big college football games across the nation. So check out all the various team channels. But for the complete look, it's wagertalk.com with Steve right there. The exclusive under the radar selection right here, the voice of college football, courtesy Steve. You can get that on Patreon or as a premium YouTube member. College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the voice of college football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the voice of college football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under the radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the voice of college football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.